Welcome back. This is episode number 61. In the last episode, we could not complete the decisions on Rule 3. We were discussing the Law Commission report and the amendment which was brought to Rule 3 and the restrictions which were imposed, retaining the power of the court to grant interim order, add interim order without issuing notice to the party, opposite party. Now, please note a few decisions. 1993 3 SCC 161 Shivakumar versus MCD, that is 1993 3 SCC 161. It is a mandatory requirement. Procedure to follow while granting ex parte injunction was discussed in that decision. And the Supreme Court held that it is mandatory. Another decision, 1994 4 SCC 1994 4 SCC 225 Morgan Stanley Mutual Fund versus Kartik Das, Kartik Das. There are 3 judges there. The earlier decision also 3 judges. Supreme Court indicated the factors which should weigh with a court in the grant of ex parte injunction. The following questions are to be asked. Whether irreparable or serious mischief will ensue to the plaintiff. 2. Whether the refusal of ex parte injunction would involve greater injustice than grant of it would involve. By refusing it, court can say, I will not grant ex parte injunction, I will issue notice. It may result in some injustice. Whether refusal of the ex parte injunction would involve greater injustice, then the court can grant it. The court will also consider the time at which the plaintiff first had notice of the act complained of, so that the making of an improper order against a party in his absence is prevented. Next, 4. The court will consider whether the plaintiff had acquiesced for some time, and in such circumstances it will not grant ex parte injunction. So something happened, some invasion on your rights, but it happened 1 year ago. You did not complain, then rush to the court. And when the defendant makes attempt to do it again. See, I am not saying, or no court will say that the court has no power to grant it. But this factor will be noticed. What did you do for 1 year? Not that the suit is within limitation, that is not the question. Before the amendment of the Specific Relief Act, 3 years was the period of limitation to file a suit for specific performance. But still, the court may ask a question, what was the reason for this much delay? Not that the suit is barred. Suit is not barred. But there are certain discretionary orders which the court may not exercise when there is inordinate delay on the part of the person who applies for such discretionary relief. The court would expect a party applying for ex parte injunction to show utmost good faith in making the application. Good faith is required. Next, 6. Even if granted, the ex parte injunction would be for a limited period of time. Otherwise, what will happen? If ex parte order of injunction is granted, it will continue, call on this date, that date, after 2 months, after 3 months, and for some reason, because of the rush, that will not be taken up, and it may go on and go on and on, causing irreparable injury to the respondent, the opposite party, against whom injunction was granted. You granted an ex parte order, you may do in circumstances which justify that. But the case must be taken up with promptitude. 1 month's period is provided. But which court decides it? I will ask the question. How many lawyers immediately get ready to argue an application for temporary injunction when interim order was granted? Who will do it? In exceptional cases, it will be done. Otherwise, the delay occurs on the part of each party. A person who has obtained an ex parte order of injunction would be interested in retaining that as far as possible. And the other party against whom it was granted, he will be in a hurry. But there may be reasons and reasons why the court may not be able to take it up immediately. And added with that, the circumstances that the delaying tactics being adopted by a party, all those things may occur. Even if granted, the ex parte injunction would be for a limited period of time. Suppose the injunction is granted, all right, 15 days. 15 days it has to be extended. The respondent comes, he opposes. Immediately hear it. Let him file a counter, then hearing, immediate. General principles like prima facie case, balance of convenience, and irreparable loss would also be considered by the court. So these are the tests laid down by the 3-judge bench in Morgan Stanley Mutual Fund case that is to be followed. Now, Rule 3A. "30 days is the time limit to pass a final order, and if it is not done, aggrieved party has a right of appeal or application for grant of vacating the order of temporary injunction." I may say one thing for the attention of the lawyers. In the High Court, while sitting in the jurisdiction under Article 227 and the original petitions under Article 227, every day almost, or at least 2 or 3 cases in a week, complaining that the trial court granted an ex parte order of injunction. The law mandates that it shall be disposed of within 30 days. Now 6 months are over. Still it is not being disposed of. Therefore, issue a direction to the lower court to dispose it off within 15 days or 20 days or such time as the court may fix. Such original petitions are plenty in the High Court. What does it mean? It means that something is to be rectified. So in the judicial academies, we always bring it to the notice of the court, to the judicial officers newly appointed, and apprise them of the necessity of it. But still, maybe due to various reasons, I am not on the reasons. There may be justification also, but still it occurs, and there are cases in the High Court, original petitions filed under Article 227 of the Constitution of India, voicing the grievance that the application was not disposed of even after the expiry of 6 months of granting the ex parte order of injunction. That we have to avoid. Now, please see one decision. Arjan Singh, Arjan, Arjan Singh versus, a difficult name, please note down, Punitahulwalia, Punitahulwalia and others. Arjan Singh versus so and so. AR 2008 Supreme Court 2718. Injunction neither extended nor vacated due to the mistake of the court. It was held that the injunction shall not operate thereafter. Now we come to Rule 4. Rule 4 underwent amendment in 1976. What was the amendment? The proviso was added. Proviso was added. Provisos. Two provisos by the 1976 amendment. Now, that was based on the recommendation of the Law Commission. What was the recommendation? Injunction irregularly obtained by suppression of material facts, in which case the injunction order should be dissolved, should be set aside, should be discharged. That was the suggestion made by the Law Commission. And that was accepted. Any party dissatisfied with the order includes plaintiff, defendant and even a third party who had subsequently come on record. Proviso, party knowingly made a false statement and injunction was granted without notice, shall vacate the injunction unless for reasons it is not necessary so to do. That is the reason. Proviso 2, opportunity of being heard was given. The injunction shall not be discharged, varied or set aside unless there is a change of circumstance or undue hardship. Without notice, an order cannot be vacated. Now, these are some of the decisions which are relevant while dealing with rules 1 to 5 of Order 39. And there are many. I just gave some sample decisions for your convenience, for your guidance and for your help and for further study. Don't stop with this. This is not final. This is not all. It's only a tip of the iceberg. Just a tip. So that extensive reading, there is no substitute. That they have to, the lawyers have to, law students have to. Law students may not get that much time in a semester to read all those things. But after your study, it can be done if you want to practice. Now, interlocutory orders. Rule 6 onwards. Rule 6 onwards. That just we will read, we will have a discussion and that's all. That is enough. And what is being used by lawyers and the courts mostly and the litigants is rules 1 and 2. The instances were 6 or 7 or 8, 9 are rare. I do not know what is the position in other states. In Kerala, it is very, very rare. Very rare. But there are very many avenues for lawyers to protect the interest of their clients. You need not feel helpless. Certain situations, the parties may come and rush to your office and say that this was done by the opposite side, he is a very powerful man. And then say that I applied for an injunction was granted, then what else I can do? We will expedite the trial to the extent possible. All those things are the usual things, because in the office of the advocates also there will be rush. They will have pressure of work. But sometimes, in certain situations, you can resort to these rules to protect the interest of your client. Let us see how it works. 6. I will read Rule 6. Power to order interim sale. The court may, this is referable to 94E, Section 94E. The court may, on the application of any party to a suit, order the sale by any person named in such order, and in such manner, and on such terms as it thinks fit, any movable property being the subject matter of suit, or attached before judgment in such suit, which is subject to speedy and natural decay, or which for any other just and sufficient cause it may be desirable to have it sold at once. In such situations, the court itself will take urgent steps. Court itself will do it. See, an item of movable property was attached, which is subject to speedy and natural decay. So after attachment it is kept there, it is destroyed. Who is going to gain? Nobody is going to gain. Therefore it is necessary to take some immediate steps for sale, and the proceeds realized, and such orders will be passed by the court for retaining that amount, subject to the orders of subject to the decision, the final decision in the suit. So this is that power. That power, attachment of movables also is very rare. Sometimes it is being done. Exceptional cases. It is done. Rule 7. Detention, preservation, inspection, etc. of subject matter of suit. The court may, on the application of any party to a suit, and on such terms as it thinks fit, make an order for the detention, preservation or inspection of any property which is a subject matter of the suit, or as to which any question may arise therein. So what are all the things? Detention, preservation or inspection. For all or any of the purposes aforesaid, authorize any person to enter upon or into any land or building in the possession of any other party to such suit. C. For all or any of the purposes aforesaid, authorize any samples to be taken, or any observation to be made, or experiment to be tried, which may seem necessary or expedient for the purpose of obtaining full information or evidence. Samples can be taken. It is not only in criminal cases that samples can be taken. In civil cases also samples can be taken. Authorize any samples to be taken, or any observation to be made, or experiment to be tried, which may seem necessary or expedient for the purpose of obtaining full information or evidence. The provisions as to execution of process shall apply mutatis mutandis to persons authorized to enter under this rule. that execution, the court may enter the premises, break open the lock, etc., etc. All those things are there. Same rules will apply. Detention, preservation. Now, eight. Application for such orders to be after notice. An application by the plaintiff for an order under Rule 6 or 7 may be made at any time after institution of the suit. An application by the defendant for a like order may be made at any time after appearance. Before making an order under Rule 6 or 7 on an application made for the purpose, the court shall, except where it appears that the object of making such order would be defeated or by the delay, direct notice thereof to be given to the opposite party. So any application under Rule 6 and 7 only after notice. In exceptional cases where the court is satisfied that the delay will cause, the purpose will be defeated by the delay, it may pass an ad interim ex parte order. When party may be put in immediate possession of land, the subject matter of the suit. Where land paying revenue to government or a tenure liable to sale is subject matter of a suit. Most of the lands which are the subject matters of suit are land paying revenue to the government or a tenure liable to sale is the subject matter of a suit. If the party in possession of such land or tenure neglects to pay the government revenue or the rent due to the proprietor of the tenure, as the case may be, and such land or tenure is consequently ordered to be sold, any other party to the suit claiming to have an interest in such land or tenure may, upon payment of the revenue or rent due previously to the sale, and with or without security at the discretion of the court, be put in immediate possession of the land or tenure. The land revenue now it is negligible. But there were times, in 50s and before. That is the history in respect of land tenures. I think many of the young lawyers may not be knowing that the paddy lands were more valuable than dry lands, coconut garden or any other garden. Paddy was the main thing. Paddy land, single crop, double crop, 3 crops which can be raised. Value is more. But now it is the opposite side, opposite way. Dry lands are valuable and paddy lands nobody will get any proper value. And at that time, the dry lands will be given on lease by the landlords or such small holders or semi-landlords or whatever it is, with a condition to pay only the revenue and some payment, customary dues. Lease, what is the consideration? What is the stipulation? The lessee shall pay the government dues, government revenue. See, at the time of Britishers, before independence, government revenue was one of the major factors. It's very difficult to pay the government revenue even after independence because of the money value. Now it is very negligible. What is the land revenue for per acre of land? So it is a flea bite for any landowner. But that was not the position before. Therefore, particularly dry lands will be leased with a stipulation to pay only the land revenue. I have seen such documents. Plus some customary dues, something during Onam or say any other thing. Not money. You pay the revenue. And that person is in possession. He is not paying the revenue. What will happen? The property will be sold under Revenue Recovery Act. Revenue recovery proceedings will be initiated. Then who will lose? The lessor will lose. Lessee has nothing to lose. Then that person can apply for, I may be put in immediate possession, to salvage the property. So if the party in possession of such land or tenure neglects to pay the government revenue or the rent due to the proprietor of the tenure, say I am the owner of the land, I grant a lease to you. And somebody has you have entered into some arrangement with a third party, and that party has to get the land. But you are not paying the rent to me. And that party will lose the right if you do not pay the rent to me. So that third party can file a suit and enforce. And he can even ask for a direction to put him in possession of the property to save it. Claiming to have an interest in such land or tenure may, upon payment of the revenue or rent due previously to the sale, be put in possession of the land or tenure. And the court in its decree may award against the defaulter the amount so paid, with interest thereon at such rate as the court thinks fit, or may charge the amount so paid, with interest thereon at such rate as the court orders, in any adjustment of accounts which may be directed in the decree passed in the suit. I said about the paddy land and dry land. I have seen, experienced, even coconut gardens converted into paddy lands in 70s. Why? Because the value of the paddy became 3 times, 4 times than the normal thing. That phenomenon remained only for 2 or 3 years. So at that time coconut garden was dug and it was made fit for paddy cultivation. So once you convert the land into paddy cultivation, then no law prohibits it. Whereas if you fill up the paddy land, the law prohibits it. That is the difference. But such a phenomenon has not occurred thereafter. And there is no predictable chance for such a state of affairs to come again. Because the paddy cultivation is all throughout the state has come down. Deposit of money, etc. in court, Rule 10. Where the subject matter of a suit is money or some other thing capable of delivery, and any party thereto admits that he holds such money or other thing as a trustee for another party, or that it belongs to or is due to another party, the court may order the same to be deposited in court or delivered to such last named party with or without security, subject to such further directions. Why rules 6 to 10 are not being applied, at least in our state, is that such instances are rare. Rare, very rare. But this 7C, in appropriate cases, the samples to be taken, observation to be made, experiment to be tried, all those things are possible. See, I will give an example. I filed a suit against you, complaining that you are the neighboring property owner, you being the neighboring property owner, has started digging your land. digging your land to a considerable depth so that the lateral support of my property may lose and ultimately my land may capsize and my house may collapse. You are the defendant. You say, true, I am digging my land. I am entitled to dig up to Padal legally, and no injury will be caused to the plaintiff because it is laterite, high quality laterite stone which has got the strength of a rock. Therefore, even if it is dug to 5 feet, 6 feet or 10 feet, that will not result in capsizing of the plaintiff's property, or that will not result in the house of the plaintiff being affected by such digging. And you may apply for inspection of the land, samples of soil to be taken. For what? For making experiments. Full information or evidence, so that is before court. What is a type of land? The defendant may say it is a very strong soil that is laterite in nature and high quality laterite. So therefore there is no chance of the land being capsized and the house collapsed. But the plaintiff saying no, it may at any time collapse. The defendant applies that this may be inspected by an expert, by a geologist. It is possible. So that the best evidence is available before court. So in criminal cases we have got the evidence of scientific experts, FSL laboratory, ballistic experts, this and that. All those tests are available. Fingerprint also. Fingerprint usually happens in civil cases also. So there are other scientific experiments which are being capable of being done even in civil cases. And if you search for power, power is there. Rule is there. Whether it is necessary for the particular case is the question of fact that you may decide. But this is very rarely applied 6 to 10. But for the sake of completeness, I have mentioned this. Now we have come to an end of Order 31. Now from the next episode onwards, it is a lengthy subject. Civil appeals we will deal with. That covers a few sections plus Order 41 and Order 43. We will deal with it to some extent, elaborate to some extent. And we will discuss matters there. Thank you.